Hey, we're live. Hi, Mac. Nice to see you.
Hey, Jeanie. Thanks
Yeah,
for having me on.
yeah. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited for this conversation. I can't tell you. So, where you calling in from? Where are you parked right now?
Yeah, so if you can see, I'm in my RV. It's a Class C mobile home, which means it's one of the RVs you can drive. It's got basically the truck front, and then it's got the RV shell over it. So it's a pretty big rig. It's 34 feet long. I have it in the Denver metro area right now. I bought a Jeep Wrangler a few months ago because at the time when I was been traveling around my RV, mainly my electric bike's been my other mode of transportation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and the Jeep that I had at the time that I was driving didn't really have. It was basically falling apart,
Mhm.
and so I sold that and got a newer. It's not a new Jeep Wrangler, but it's a used one that's got some good miles on it. That's got all the lifts. I mean, when I look at vehicles, it's typically what can I take elk hunting is normally the number one thing that I'm looking for.
Come
What can
on.
get me
Yeah.
through the snow?
I
And you did the RV life for a bit too, so I think
yeah.
you're out in Utah, so getting out and seeing the sights,
Yeah.
that's just one of the things that I think for me is really important with the vehicle. So basically, I got my Jeep Wrangler, and I just got done setting up a tow bar on the front of it so
Yeah.
that I can tow it behind,
I
and
love
then
that.
just getting the electrical done. So yeah, just about ready to get going. I got a turkey hunt coming up in the mountains of Colorado, and then after that, likely a lot of kayaking, fly fishing,
Mhm.
hiking, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm hearing right off the bat, one of the things you're highlighting, Mac, is one of the things that we share in common. One is that I lived in an Airstream for 3.5 years, so we both know what it's like to live on the road. We
Yep.
both know what it's like to love the outdoors, and we both have a passion for healing and restoration. And that's kind of how we got to know each other a little bit. We met online at Substack, and I was
Hmm.
really interested in your story. I follow you, you follow me, and we share a love of faith in God, and we it's something that we incorporate into what we do as well. And so, what I want to do today is let people get to know you a little bit, know your story, and particularly how your faith has impacted that. So let's talk about your publication is Mac, the porn-free millennial, which is incredible. And I know just the fact that you're willing to talk about your addiction and your recovery has really gotten the interest of so many people, me included. Um, and just to say, I work with a lot of people who come to see me because they're broken in their bodies and their souls, or they're lost, far away from God.
Right.
And I do see people with porn addictions.
Yeah.
So I'm really wanting to hear your story in particular and how you navigated your way out of that. So let's just start with that. Tell us a little bit about your background. When did you know that you were dealing with an addiction? How did that come about? And then we'll go from
Mm.
there.
Yeah, well, it's a great question to ask. When did I know that I was dealing with addiction? Probably lot further out than you'd think.
Okay.
Uh, I was just writing about this today in my newsletter about Carl Jung and the shadow and
Yeah.
how basically your subconscious starts writing the script for you that you don't even know is going on. And that's a really relatable to me, I think, in my life. So just to share a little bit about the origin story, I suppose. So I was first exposed to porn when I was the age of 10, and
Mhm.
that was at a neighbor's house, just across the street where I
Wow.
grew up. And it was just one of those things, right? Late at night, hey, let's go look at this, sneaking around the house and going online, going into, I think it was his father's, just like the office area,
Right.
and just watching this stuff. And of course, as a young boy, as you're entering into your puberty, it's very enthralling to see this stuff,
Yeah.
to see naked women and just being able to find this stuff and being able to search for it. There
Right.
is that innate sense of the hunt, so to speak,
Yeah.
and in the chase and the thrill of all that. But at the
Right.
same time, you're talking about faith. So I grew up Catholic,
Mhm.
and I knew right away that this wasn't what I should be doing. I didn't feel right doing it. I felt
Okay.
a lot ashamed doing it.
Yeah.
And I think when I was that age, though, I didn't really quite realize the severity or the consequences that would happen later in life.
Right.
To me, it was something that I think all of us kids knew in Catholic schools. Hey, keep it silent, but hey, if you know where to find it, let me know. Or hey, this one of our friends, hey, this friend knows where to find it. And yeah, it started to be like sleepovers and stuff like that. I think just around that age, it was just something that was pretty pervasive just around
Wow.
our age group. And then it became something that I started to do on my own, right, when I
Right.
was at my own house. And I'd sneak on the computer or go onto the TV late at night to look for infomercial or commercials. I won't name any names, but just things that were really triggering on TV, or just trying to find anything I could get my hands on, basically.
Right. Okay.
And so yeah, that was a part of my childhood growing up. And I think at first when I look back on it, it was a mixture of being really curious,
Yeah.
and then also I think the hooks that happen when you're doing something that you shouldn't, but you're getting away with it, basically.
Yeah.
And a little bit of the thrill of doing something and being like, "Hey, I got away with it. I didn't get caught," but still having that suspense of, "Oh, I might get caught," type of thing.
Okay.
And yeah, I love my parents. They've been married for 35 plus years. Amazing parents. I don't really think that they ever gave me the proper talk when it came to pornography.
Right.
There was some sex talk and things like that, but I don't think I ever really fully got. I don't think they really fully knew the extent of online porn. And that's
Oh,
the interesting thing, as I've come to realize writing about this and talking about it, as just the different generations and what they experience with pornography.
yeah.
But I'm 33, so I grew up in the 90s, and I still remember as a kid not having internet, which is a really weird thing to say. Uh, some younger audience members probably don't, like, what? Internet's always been around, but there was a time in my childhood, um, I feel like privileged to say, where I was able to run around and not have any internet. But then it was around, I think, 2000-ish, when I was around the age of 10 is like when internet really started to pop up. And I still remember the noise that it would make when you're trying to connect, like the ding dong, that song,
Oh,
or
yeah, 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 yeah,
that tune.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, I still remember that. And that was probably it's probably burned in my mind, because that's when I was trying to fire up the internet to look at porn, basically. It's just this crazy to think about. But
Yeah.
basically, I'd say as a kid, I mean, it was just full blown for a really long time. And more or less, I got caught here and there by my parents, but I never really fully understood, and I don't think they did either,
Yeah.
just the deep roots that were embedding in my life, and that would really come later in life and ruin a lot of things.
Yeah.
So that's mainly just telling, just as a kid, how I was introduced to
Yeah.
it. And I would say, thinking back on it, that past relationships before my past marriage, when I look back on it, it really did affect those relationships as well. I remember the first
Wow.
girlfriend I ever had, I just broke up with her out of the blue. And I think that was around the time where I was like looking at porn a lot. And it's almost like I just lost interest in her.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and yeah, and that was in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Like I just lost interest, and that was basically how high school was. I didn't really have any girlfriends or anything.
Yeah.
I played a lot of sports. So that was kind of my relationship, was mainly with sports, basketball and football. But I think then going into college, yeah, same thing. Just I think I would quit it out of just being like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. But I never really had a strategy for it. So
Right.
I'd quit porn, and then I'd date a girl or something, and I wouldn't look at it for a while, but then I'd go back to it, and that seemed to
Yeah.
always be around the time I'd have a breakup. And yeah, I just remember looking back at that time, that it'd just be if I was bored, or if I wasn't feeling quite confident. Just anything really was just an excuse to look at porn for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think looking back, that's like high school and college was really when it was really full blown, and I
Yeah.
just couldn't stop, and I was just doing it all the time.
Yeah.
And I wrote about this about a month ago, and it was in my newsletter. I wrote about something really personal to me was with my dad, and this is looking back on it, I think what really locked in the addictive part of it and why I went to it so much was my dad growing up and still now really look up to him, role model. But what I learned through therapy was the term light bringer.
Yeah.
Was basically he was someone I really looked up to. He could do no wrong, and he played college basketball, and he was my coach growing up, and still I think the best coach I've ever had. And when I was going into high school, he started to drink, and he was never abusive. He was never like, yeah, abusive physically or in what he said, but he was just really absent.
Yes. Just
And for such, yeah, go ahead.
disconnected from you, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and to have someone that was so connected, and then when I was going into high school, I really wanted to go play college basketball like my dad. And I had 2 knee injuries that I missed 2 seasons, and that really affected me, my mental health, like, I just felt really devastated by that.
Yep.
And that was around the same time he was disconnecting, and I think I just remember, and I wrote about this, was I'd walk in through my main door, and then there'd be basically the family room, like the TV room, and it would be right next to the basement door where that's where I lived, was in the basement. And anytime I saw my dad and I just knew he was drunk, I wouldn't even talk to anybody. I'd just go straight to the basement and just go look at
Yeah.
porn. So it
Yeah.
became this way, I think, for me to escape things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was and in my mind, right, this embedded habit to heal myself or to solve whatever I was feeling, right? And that's
Yeah.
what I've learned through recovery is we more go to porn as a solution for things. We
Yeah.
want it to solve something. There's something that we need and we're trying to solve it. And I think for me was when I felt when I felt I didn't have value, that someone wasn't paying attention to me, that I felt unloved.
Yeah.
That was a time really where I would go to porn the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so looking back, it was pretty full blown in college. And then yeah, and then going in, I started to date, my ex-wife now, but we started to date off and on for a little bit. And I feel like during those times I did pretty well with porn. More just because I was in a relationship. It was never really because of a strategy I put in. I never had a strategy until I was about 30, which is wild to think about. But
Mhm.
and then when we got engaged and everything, I think I was sober for a while, and then we did marriage counseling and talked about porn. And I think at the time I was sober for almost a year or half a year,
Mhm.
and then we got married, and then it was like 6 months after that, I just started to get back into bad habits
Yeah.
with things, and I just remember she caught me uh, looking at something I shouldn't have, right? And I was not honest about it.
Right.
And just looking back at it, it's wild because I gaslit her. I totally did not take any accountability for what I did.
Wow. Yep.
And it's wild to think about now because I would never imagine acting in such a way. But back when I was in my mid 20s, I think my brain finally developed, right? I think it's around the age of 25 for men,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense. It's just funny. But for me, I was just completely unaware at how much pain I was causing her at the time.
Wow. 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 Wow.
Yeah, and how she's like, "You're lying to me." And I would just try to figure out some way to get out of that or
Yeah.
to to not believe that I was a liar. Because growing up my whole life, I never thought of myself as a liar. I think people always held me in high esteem as somebody that would follow through with what they had to say and everything like that. That's how I was treated by my family, my friends, and then I started to date this girl who I really loved. I got married to her, and then to be met with this, I got defensive about it.
Yeah. That's
And
the nature
I
of addiction, isn't it? It's just like
yeah.
you wind up becoming a person that you don't recognize anymore. So anyway, I don't want to stop your story. You keep going.
No, no. Yeah, so I think that was my first rock bottom moment. There's a lot. I don't probably not
Yeah.
gonna talk about all of them, and half of them, it's like, sometimes you just have memories that you just like, "Okay, am I gonna really focus on that?" So, I'll talk about the ones that really stand out, but I just remember with that, I remember her talking to me and just saying, "Hey, we should just create some space, go just have some solitude," which was really good advice from her. And we had this family cabin that my grandparents built in the mountains of Colorado, and it's got some access to some fishing, and I love to fish. So I took my dog Bo with me, and we went up to the cabin and did like
Mhm.
a 3-day weekend, and it was basically like a porn recovery boot camp. Uh, I still remember this to this day. I started to look up things, and I found this podcast called Porn Free Radio. So if
Okay.
anyone's listening, that's a great podcast. I mean, I think the best one out there. He's been in the podcasting realm for a while. He's kind of the OG, I think, like porn free guy. His name's
Okay.
Matt Dobshoots. But Matt, his podcast really struck me because his first podcast was basically him talking about getting caught and how that all developed and why he does his podcast. So I remember listening to that as I was in the parking garage, getting into my car to go to the mountains. And I just listened to, I think, 20 podcasts of his. It's, that's all I did was I fished, ate some steak or whatever, the fish that I
Mhm.
caught, walked my dog, and read. I
Mhm.
read Jocko Willink's Discipline Equals Freedom, and I listened to this podcast, Porn Free Radio. And then I just journaled my brains out, which I never journaled before, which is interesting because I really wanted to be a writer when I was in high school and in college. And then when I got married, I think I just stopped writing.
Right. Okay.
So it's interesting to look back on that because I write now a lot and consider myself as someone that's becoming a writer. I'd like to keep writing and write more. But that's really when I started to write. Was I started to
Right.
journal. I started to write down things, really interesting things too. Just, hey, what triggers you? I mean, heck, I wrote down, this is personal, but I think it might be funny for the listener. I wrote down women in white cars, just like a nice white shiny car. And it's funny because my girlfriend, she drives a white car. So I don't know what that is, but I wrote it down, right? I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know what this
Yeah.
means, but I'm
Yeah.
just gonna write it down because this is a exercise. This is
Yeah.
something I can do to start honing in on, hey, what is this? Which was really interesting because before that time, I never even thought about it. It was unconscious. And
Yeah.
it's a weird thing to say, but I really did not think about it. It was almost like it was this Pavlov's dog thing to where the bell would ring and I would start looking up porn.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel great about it, right? But I didn't quite have regret or remorse because I didn't really think it was affecting anybody
Right. Oh wow.
until, yeah, until I got
Yeah.
married, until I saw my wife at like, hey, what are you doing? Like, this is, we're Christians. So, hey, this is a sin against God. This is a sin against yourself, me. And I didn't quite get it. So I wasn't quite, when I apologized, I wasn't quite sorry because
Right.
I didn't quite understand I knew it was wrong, but I didn't quite understand like why
Yeah.
and and all that. So I started,
Can I pause
yeah,
for
go
one
ahead.
second? Because I want to say something I think that's really relevant at this point in the journey. Is you had mentioned even from the beginning when you had that initial exposure and there was, with the kids and stuff, and you said deep down there was shame and you knew as a Catholic kid back then, it's
Right.
like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, right? But it was something that you kind of wanted to keep in the dark. It wasn't something that you wanted to, other than with your friends, it wasn't something that you just would talk about. And I think that's the very nature of what happens to us as far as the spiritual perspective is when things are kept in the dark. The enemy, the Satan, whatever you want to call it, likes darkness, right? And
Hmm.
we know that when when things start to get exposed, when light comes in, it doesn't feel good, but that's when the healing can start, right? When all of a sudden there's a light that comes on it, and it's like, ooh, wait. And when you're carrying on by yourself, you're not even realizing there's anything wrong with this, and you don't want to share it. You know that it's not something you want to talk about, which is ironic because now you're talking about it all the time, but the light has
Right.
come in, you know,
Right.
and you're realizing like, wow, this is important to get this out here. But it sounds like after your wife caught you and sort of started to accuse you, and then you're feeling like, okay, I'm gaslighting her. I don't want to admit what's happening here. I don't want to, whatever. And she suggests, okay, let's separate and have some time alone. It was then that all of a sudden you start to be curious about what exactly is going on with me.
Yeah.
And I think what I want to point out here, Mac, which is something that I talk about with my clients a lot, is to start to get curious about your own behavior, to start to get
Mm.
curious about why you do the things that you do, to be able to look at that from a perspective of curiosity and kindness, because a lot of times, especially if you're in an addiction, whether it's porn or drugs or food or whatever it is, there's a lot of shame, and
Yeah.
there can be a lot of self condemnation that comes into that as well. It's like, oh man, I suck. Why am I doing this? I don't want to do this anymore. It's hurting my wife or whatever. But to be able to be kind, because there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. Okay. And again, we can go off on a tangent on this, but I just want to say this to anybody that's listening right now. Whatever that addiction is, and in this case, porn, is we are looking for comfort. We are looking for connection. We're looking to sometimes numb pain. You talked about how painful it was that dad was disconnected from you, your hero.
Right.
He was not there for you. And by then, you already had a habit of being able to comfort yourself because you get a nice dopamine hit,
Oh
using,
yeah.
and it's a little bit of a, whoo, okay, I'm feeling down. It's like you said, Pavlov's dog. My hormones are going down. I'm not feeling good, and I need to get that boost up, and it's the dopamine hit. So at this point of the story, you're now starting to get curious about your behavior, and you're spending time alone, you're getting information coming in, which is someone's talking about the addiction, and you're hearing,
Right.
you're starting to journal about, okay, what's coming up in me. So it gives you an opportunity. It's a tool that you're using to be reflective about what's happening inside of me instead of spending the time trying to white knuckle it, like, oh, I'm just not
Mm.
porn. White knuckling it, I mean, I've read your stuff. It just doesn't work. And I know with my clients,
No.
it doesn't work. We need to understand what's driving the addiction. Okay, what is the need that the addiction is filling in my life? So you're at this point in your journey, you've been called out by your wife, you're taking a weekend away to kind of reflect, and now you're starting to get curious and you're journaling. Okay, so pick up with the story.
No, that was a great ad. Yeah, and I got my notebook out too. I see your pen. I was like, okay, I
Yes.
want to write some stuff down because you're sharing some really good wisdom. And my lighting is hilarious. It looks like I have the worst sunburn. Maybe I do, but I was out in the sun a lot. Okay, that's better. Yeah. So basically, I went up to the cabin. I was fishing a lot and thinking a lot, right? And like you said, this was really the first time I thought about what I was doing, really, outside of this primal or this program, whatever you call it, habit that I was doing.
Yeah.
So I started to write it down, started to think about it. I came back with a plan, and I started to get involved in church. I got involved in a Bible study. I got involved with a sexual addiction counselor, Christian based. So that was the first time I ever went to a therapist. And I think what I've learned at the time is I don't think I had an issue with sex addiction. I think as I've learned with porn addiction, there's some separate details with that. I never really had an urge to go have sex with people. That was never an issue with my marriage or past relationships. It was more of the inward act that I'd go inward
Yeah,
versus outward.
right.
But it was a great start, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And then so getting involved with the church, Bible study, and then the counselor. And then the third one was actually I reached out to Matt Dobschuetz because he did groups. And I think I initially started doing one-on-ones with him, and then I went into group. So I did three things basically was I reconnected with my faith because I think that's an important thing. As you were eloquently putting it earlier in just describing this, I was thinking about how really in high school, definitely in college, I just disconnected from God. I
Yeah,
disconnected from my faith. I think I had some things with the Catholic Church that I still have that disconnected me from Catholic Church,
yeah,
but I just didn't really put a lot of effort into speaking with God or getting close with Him. And I think a big part of that was just because my porn use was so full blown, I didn't even know where to start with
yeah, I
talking
get
to
that.
God. So I just didn't really even think about. Oh, I would think about it like, hey, you should start talking to God more.
Yeah,
And he has an open ear. I remember my grandpa would always ask me every time I saw him. He was a very devout Catholic. He would always ask me, "Hey, when's the last time you prayed the rosary?" Pretty much like the times when I'd be in college, my dad would ask me, "Hey, when's the last time you changed the oil on the truck?" That's how my
wow,
grandpa would ask me, is like, "When's the last time you prayed the rosary?" That was always the first thing he said to me, and I
wow.
just never had a good answer. I never and
Yeah,
I feel I look back on that now because he's gone and he's passed, but I think about that a lot of he was really looking out for me. He really was checking in on my spiritual health, and my spiritual health was, like, dead at the time.
yeah,
And that makes a lot of sense now looking back on it, where my spiritual health was dead,
mm,
and I was just sleeping around with people and looking at porn and just felt stuck in that cycle.
yeah.
And then so that's before my marriage, but yeah, so marriage, come back, I have a plan. I start working on this stuff, and I
Can
gain
I
a
interrupt? Because
yeah, go.
I want to say
Yeah,
one thing that you shared with me when we talked privately,
sure.
in organizing this, and I think it's important to highlight here. You had told me as a young boy and you were in Catholic school that you really felt like because you were acting out even at that age with porn that God was mad at you, that you couldn't go to him, that you would be condemned, that you had already messed up. And we had talked about the fact that when we're in a branch of faith that paints paints Father God as someone who is always angry,
Mhm,
who who's pissed when we mess up, okay? It encourages us to stay away from him when actually we need to be running to him. There's a story in Luke 15 about the prodigal son, and
mhm,
it's a father who has two sons, and the prodigal runs away, and he goes and he asks his father for his inheritance, and he goes and he gambles and he spends it on women and bad living, high living and all of that, and then he winds up having nothing, and he's sitting in a pig pen basically, and just,
right.
yeah, I mean, it's a picture of his life at that point, right? It's a pig pen. And what he decides to do is he's like, you know what, my servants at my father's house have a better life than I have right here. I'm going to go
Mm,
home and I'm going to repent and I'm going to
mhm,
say, Dad, I am so sorry I messed up. And here's the surprising twist of the story. The father isn't waiting for him to go, yeah, you deserve da da da. But the father actually goes running to him. And that's
yeah,
such a picture of what really God is about, is that he wants us to run to him in our troubles, in our sin, when we're stuck in the pig pen. And so many of us feel like I can't go to God because I've messed up, or my faith has said to me that you're on the outside now. God doesn't want you. He's disgusted with you. And
right.
this is what keeps people away from their faith, right? Like you said, I had turned away from God, but it happened when you were a little kid and you just thought, I've already messed up. I'm already condemned. You're filled with shame and you're staying away when he's the answer to a lot of this. He's the one that actually is our comforter. He's the one that gives us tells us who we really are. When that prodigal son, this is the story in Luke, when he runs home, the father actually puts a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and he gives him a
Hmm.
robe. And those are all symbolic of his identity. Like, kid, you belong to me. I don't care that you've been off in the pig pen. You belong to me. And when you come to me, I am going to affirm to you your identity as my son. And so this, I want to highlight this part of your story right here. There was a lot of things that contributed. You know, you said I got an accountability group, I went to therapy, like all of that's important, okay? But the point is, I'm going to turn back to the Father. I'm going to turn back to my faith because he's the one that speaks over me, my identity. Yeah. Does
Oh
that sound
yeah,
like?
it's beautiful. Well put. Yeah, and it brought up a thought. I think I was talking earlier that I I, I wanted to become a writer when I was younger.
Mhm.
Well, preceding that, and my parents will have the videotape to back it up. Actually, when I was a little kid, I thought preschool meant priest school.
I love that.
So so I thought I was going to school to be because my uncle's a priest. He works over in the Vatican actually in Rome.
Wow.
And I always thought I was like, "Oh, I want to be like Uncle John and be a priest." So I used to do homilies in our living room. I had like this candelabra and I put a I put a little plastic soccer ball, like a Barbie soccer ball on it, like my microphone. And I think I remember giving a sermon about if a bee stings you, like don't be mad at God, basically. That was my sermon on the mount as I was a little
Dude,
kid.
that's incredible. Come on, Mac. I
So
love
I
that.
I was this really devout kid. I remember that because
Yeah.
I remembered that in private school when I was really young, I would make it a point to kneel as long as everybody else at the very front. And who knows if I was just trying to show off, but I would kneel like on the wood because I always thought of kneeling in Catholic church. Kneeling is not fun. And especially there's some Catholic churches even today that they just don't really have great padding for your knees, like the
Yeah.
really hardcore ones. And I remember as a kid, I was like, well, Jesus died on the cross. So I'm gonna if I'm suffering, I'm doing it for God. That's how I thought when I was a kid.
Wow.
And I think internalizing though that belief young and how I remember being taught was if you did certain sins, they were very serious cardinal sins,
Yeah.
and that you have to do all this stuff to get it forgiven, basically.
Yeah.
And completely missing the boat on Jesus dying for our sins and that being the price that was paid for our
Wow.
death.
Wow.
And I didn't really think about that, and I don't think I was really taught that when I was a kid in Catholic school. So I think that, like you said, that really drove me away from God because I just didn't really I wasn't connected with Jesus really. I just disconnected from Jesus, and Jesus brought me back in bringing believing back in Jesus and what he did as a role model, as a man. And that's I mean, we'll talk more about me today, but I mean, gosh, like that's just always blows me away is Jesus and how he lived his life. Like that's as a man how I want to model how I want to act every day, how I want to model that for other people is to just think about Jesus when I every day think about what would he do in this moment or how could he handle this kind of conflict.
Yeah.
And I was completely disconnected, but I started to get back. So basically
Yeah.
in the marriage, yeah, I would say that there was some really good times of sobriety. I was building back a lot of trust. I think I had a few relapses here and there, but more or less, I was able to handle them a lot better because I had strategies in place. And the amazing thing, I think, once you start doing recovery earnestly, is the frequency between the times you masturbate to porn or masturbate or
Mhm.
whatever you count as a relapse. The frequency starts to widen to where it's not like you're doing it every day. Maybe you bring it out to every month, and you just keep going to where it becomes less and less frequent. So that's really, I would say, was a really high point uh, back then. Was in my marriage, early marriage. I was turning things around. I think I was realizing uh, the pain it caused. I was with this therapist at the time, this Christian based therapist that was really helping me out We did a trauma timeline, and I think that's when I started to realize there was something connected with my dad and his drinking with my addiction.
Yep,
And the crazy thing about it was we were just about to start doing EMDR,
yep,
uh, which is I think it's been around since the 80s.
yep.
And I don't know if you do a better job explaining it to the audience than me. But you're
You, yeah, describe your experience.
yeah. So basically, the best way I can describe EMDR is uh, it's a way to rewire your neural pathways through eye movement
Hmm.
and through a trained uh, your therapist counselor basically leads you through some exercises as you're following their hand with your eyes.
Yeah,
And as you're talking through and you're remembering things, your neural pathways start to rewire through the movement of your eyes because
hmm,
your eyes are connected to your brain.
right.
And it sounds wild, but it really works. And it worked for me. But we were just about to start it. And that's when we bought a house. And the house was hour and a half south from Denver in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
And that was a great thing, but what happened and what I didn't realize at the time was I was moving away from all the good things, all the support that I had that was really helpful for my recovery, right? Like I
Yeah.
had my Bible study guys, which I started to open up to them about my struggles with porn. That's where I really started to realize, oh, I can actually talk about this pretty well. I'm not afraid to talk about porn and my addiction to it. And I started to see that other guys started to open up about porn and their relationship about it. And the funny thing about Christians, right, is no one raises their hand when someone asks, "Hey, who looks at porn?" And all the Christian men are like,
Yeah.
not me, not me. I don't look at porn." They're like looking at their wife or their girlfriend. No, I don't look at porn. But then when if you if you had like a light that showed how many people, the lights would just be blinking everywhere in the room
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
just across everywhere. Like
Yeah.
if there's the one man that hasn't looked at porn is probably living in Antarctica or something, or the deep jungles of the Amazon. And even now, I think I've read some articles about people in the Amazon getting internet and being addicted to porn. So it's really widespread. It's everywhere.
Huge. And in
And
fact,
yeah.
I'm going to validate what you're saying here. And this is probably going back, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And it was in a conference, an all Christian conference. And I think it was Todd White speaking. I don't know if you know him, but
Mm-mm.
he was a guy that was addicted to porn and, drugs. And, his story is incredible. But he talked about how it's possible to get free, and he was such a passionate guy, and he's like, I'm just calling you down now. If you're struggling with this, I want you down here now. Honestly, Mac, it felt like the whole auditorium got up and there was this mass
Mm,
flood
that's
towards the
cool.
stage because, you know, people don't want to be stuck in this. And
Right.
want to I just want to honor you right now because of the fact that you are willing to talk about this and you're taking this thing that is in the dark. Satan wants to keep this in the dark. He wants to keep it in the shadows. He wants to say, you don't need to tell people. They're going to think this of you, and your church is going to do that of you, and all. And there might be misguided people who follow Jesus
Sure.
that will respond that way. I've seen it. But in general, we just need somebody that's willing to bring the issue out into the light and say, no more.
Right.
I'm struggling. And by you doing that in your men's group, you gave permission to all of the other men who are going, yeah, this is an issue for me as well, to be able to bring that issue out into the light. And that's the huge first step. That's the part, and I think you're going to share part of the testimony where you kept something in the darkness
Yeah.
from your wife. Okay, so I'm going to let you pick up the story. And again, found when I keep something in the dark, it's going to grow into nasty things in the dark. I've got to actually be bringing this into the light always. So pick up your story.
Yeah. No, it's a great ad. So basically, we moved to Colorado Springs
Hmm.
and got a great house. right by Garden of the Gods. If you guys have ever been to Colorado
Yeah,
Springs,
it's
it's
awesome.
so beautiful. I think it's one of the most, if not the most visited national landmarks in the country. I know you have some in Utah as well.
Yeah,
That one's neat because it's not far off the highway. It's tucked away against the foothills, but basically these natural rock outcroppings that just shoot out of the ground. It's free to go to. But literally, I could walk there from my house. We got basically a small house and a next to big houses. Got like the smallest
perfect.
house in a richer neighborhood. And as millennials, I mean, just getting a house was an accomplishment in
Incredible.
itself.
Yeah,
And I feel like we were really repairing things. Things weren't perfect all the time. I think definitely intimacy was affected throughout the relationship because of
yeah,
the early and it's something I really want to point out that's really important too for people listening is it's not just the porn use, it's really the lies surrounding it that are typically the most hurtful, I think, for a spouse or for a partner is it's I think the porn in itself, right, is there's a lot of things you can talk about that aren't healthy about it, sexualizing, dehumanizing people, treating people like objects, and also as a Christian, right, like that's adultery with your eyes. Like
yeah,
there's no other way to put it.
yeah,
And but I always remember that my ex, she'd always just say, it's not really the porn itself, it's more the lie about it.
yeah,
It's you not telling the truth about it, right? And
yeah,
so basically there was repair, but there was still, I'd say intimacy struggled a lot. Really, I mean, it really got affected, I think, initially after that first rock bottom moment where that happened. It really affected our intimacy, which sucks. I mean, when you're in a marriage, intimacy is a huge part of it.
yeah,
Uh, but for me, things were going well. I think at the time I was nearing 2 years of sobriety and I was in great physical shape. I think I was running like 3 5Ks a week, just great shape. People were just wondering about me. They thought, "Hey, are you eating any food?" Because I was just really slim and fit and spiritually on fire. Just everything was clicking really well. And this is the interesting part of the story was in September 2021 is when I initially created Porn Free Millennial, the publication, the podcast, I created it. And I really the first post I ever made was in May 2023, which I'll get to. So it was September 2020, or sorry, 2021. And I was really confident. I was seeing the benefits that being porn free was happening in my life, where there was repair happening in my marriage, really close bonds with these church group guys. Also, I've just had close friends for my whole life, been blessed that way. So there's really
yeah,
good friendships. I've always had a really tight-knit family and a lot of family close. So that's always been nice. But for me, I was just seeing all the benefits and then me sharing my story with people, starting with friends too.
yeah,
They started to pick it up as well. And so I was seeing that, hey, I can be someone that can talk about this. I can glorify God with what I'm doing. And I was starting to put together all the pieces to say, hey, I should do this publication, start writing about it. And then I I think it was just the busyness of the house. I think we were in there for a couple of months, and then I think I just got really the procrastination started to set in, and I think I was just afraid to start. That was
yeah,
really it. I just was
yeah,
I just had this paralysis almost. Like I just didn't jump into it. Like I created everything. I had the first article written out. It was around the time, I don't know if you ever saw the show Chernobyl on HBO.
mm-mm.
It was about that Chernobyl event that happened in Russia, the
Okay,
nuclear.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And my first article was talking about the radioactiveness of porn use and how you can't see it, but it causes all
wow,
this devastation. So I had this article whipped up and all everything, but I just didn't post. And then I think I just started to the thing about relapses is it's not just one event. It's typically many events leading up to a relapse is what how they
yeah,
happen. And just to define it, a relapse is like crossing that red line. So for me, it would be looking at porn and masturbating would be the
yeah,
relapse or masturbating. But typically those two are really linked together for me.
yeah,
And I think I was just edging and I just started to think about porn more and there was some stress and Yeah, it was just this one night she fell asleep and I literally felt possessed. Like I just felt possessed. I just gave
Wow.
myself up and surrendered to this feeling that you need
Wow.
to, like,
Wow.
if you don't do this, it's just gonna keep plaguing you.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
let's pause here because I need to just kind of underline something here.
Yeah.
You getting free and staying free is a spiritual battle. You have an adversary. Okay, and I'm talking in the spirit realm. Okay, we've got God and we've got Satan. We've
Right.
got goodness and we've got evil. Evil does not want you to be free. And here you are getting ready to take your ministry, your word, your what God has given you out there. And all of a
Right.
sudden here comes here comes the pushback. Here
Yep.
comes, all of this stuff. And this is what people don't realize. This is that there is somebody, an evil force, whatever you want to call it, the devil, the enemy. He doesn't want you to do what you're going to do, and so there's going to be temptation that comes, and that's the battle. And you use the word. I felt possessed. I felt
Mhm.
like I have got to do this thing. Okay, and boom, there's a relapse. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and you put it in a really good way, and it's not the first time someone's mentioned that. Like my mentor, who's a priest or a pastor, and my therapist, who's a Christian counselor, they've told me that many times. Is the closer you get to this, the more you write about it, the more impassioned you get. The enemy is going to try to find ways to throw you off. Like the closer you
Excellent.
get to doing something meaningful or positive, there's going to be more temptation to fall back to
Yeah.
these old patterns, these easy
Yeah.
ways of gratifying yourself. So that's a great point. So yeah, I just remembered I was like shaking. I felt like I was convulsing almost when I had this relapse because it was this big like moment where I'm like, no, like how did I just do that, you know? And I felt so sad and really devastated by what
Yeah.
I just did because I just knew that this was just gonna break my ex's heart to hear this. And that's what I was telling myself, right?
Yeah.
I think if I would have handled things a little bit differently, which we'll talk about, things probably would have worked out differently. But of course, the enemy and my thoughts were telling me, you can't tell her this. Like you can't tell anybody
No.
this. Like you're gonna have to
Keep it
start
in
all
the
over
dark.
again.
Keep it in the dark. Push it back into the
Yeah.
dark. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
keep this in the dark. Don't tell anyone about it.
yeah.
And I'm like, but God knows. Hey, just don't tell anybody. So I made a pact with myself. Maybe it was a pact with the devil to say, hey, I'm gonna not tell anyone about this. I'm gonna just bury this. No one has to know. It'll be my thing because I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt her anymore.
Yeah.
And I've heard that countless times working with people, and it's really sad. It's just I'm hurting somebody, but I don't want to hurt them, but I just keep doing it, right? And the thing that we forget, like you're talking about, is the only way that we can break that cycle is to actually talk about it, be vulnerable, and let the Lord come in, let the light come in.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a lot like what I was writing about in my article today, but the shadow. We have to confront the shadow. We
Yep.
have to face the shadow, and that's when the light will come in, is when we actually can confront the shadow. If we don't, it's just going to keep growing. Like we have to
Uh,
face whatever that darkness is in us, because we all have it. We all have darkness within us. And but when we find it and we're able to see what it is, where the darkness is coming from, like you were saying, is a lot of the times we're hurt by something. There's something that we're hurt by.
yeah.
And we tend to do stuff to solve the hurt or to meet that need that are not healthy, that end up hurting ourselves and hurting others. And then it's this brutal cycle where we feel shame, we feel pain, and it's this cycle of pain and shame, pain and shame. I call it the porn prison. You're just stuck there. You're just stuck in this
Uh,
cell. So
yeah.
basically, I was in porn prison at the time, and my ex at the time, she got COVID around that time. And then it was biblical. We lived in at the time the area where there was a lot of wind sometimes because it was like right at the foothills. So we had this massive storm, and I believe it was either the night of my relapse, the night after it, from what I remember, and it was like this biblical storm, from what I remember. I was like, God is bringing down everything on me, and literally woke up this storm, and the neighbor's cottonwood behind us almost hit our house. It fell, and it was a giant tree, 50 feet tall, and just landed in the yard. And then the fences were destroyed. So of course that was my first natural excuse to say, well, I can't talk about it now,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So
Mhm.
then that was like bought me a little bit of time. And when all that was cleared up, I thought about like, well, hey, I got through the month or two without talking about it. So I don't need it because I don't think I relapsed after that point.
Okay.
So I thought I was out of the clear basically
Yeah.
with that. And then there was something coming up as well. So I was the best man to one of my really good friends, and uh, he, he wanted to go somewhere international, and he likes to travel a lot and go to cool places. And I don't really, I travel in the RV with and drive around, but I don't go. I've never really been too many places internationally. So of course, as the best man, I kind of had to lead things, but I was very, I'd say, like naive about things. And a lot of the guys wanted to go to Colombia and a specific place in Colombia. And this in this specific place, prostitution's legal. And I didn't think twice about it. I was like, okay, I've always wanted to go to South America. And growing up, I mean, I've never been to a strip club in my life, still haven't. And just growing up with my Catholic friends, we always just that was something that we never did. And I just wasn't really thinking through just, hey, I'm with a different group of guys. Maybe they like that kind of stuff. So long story short, I was the only married guy that went down on this trip. I didn't physically cheat on my wife, but I was definitely in the presence of prostitutes.
Yeah.
And just as a Christian man, I literally felt like I was in one of the circles of hell. And I
Oh
was
my God.
really I was praying the whole dang trip and just trying not to make eye contact with any women and really just trying to keep everyone out of trouble, keep people alive. Because
Oh my God.
that was like cartel territory. So it was a wild trip, but definitely a place I think looking back on it, because I told you that I was with that Bible study group, but then when I moved, I stopped going to that because it just wasn't cost effective for me. It was basically a 3 hour round trip. Like I tried to
Yeah.
do it for a while. So then basically I got disconnected from the church for about a year because we didn't really
Oh
find
boy.
a
Yep.
church.
Yep.
So I was in this place, familiar place where I was disconnected from God, and then literally found myself in literal living hell of sexual hell, which is wild to think about how I think this kid, this young adult, this adult that has been addicted to porn, that terrified me more than anything was being there. And I think that in a way, looking back on it, and I haven't really thought about this now until I'm talking about it right now, but that really solidified some things in my mind of this is really not good. Like this is
Yeah.
really unethical. This is not where I want to be. I don't want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
By the time I couldn't really go anywhere. I mean, I could have bought a plane ride back, but at the time I just was like, hey, I'm just gonna ride this out.
Yeah.
And so basically, got back, talked to her, and eventually the truth came out just about everything, right? And about that relapse I had that wasn't honest about. And that was really, I think, for her, just it really hurt her so bad. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's sucks to think about right now, but
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you.
woo.
Wow.
Yeah, give me a
It's
second here to collect myself.
painful. It's
Mm.
painful. You
Yeah,
know.
it's I think that's the thing that I try to get across in my writing and when I talk, hopefully if someone's listening to this, is if you haven't experienced it, if you're struggling with porn right now and that moment hasn't come, it's a event, it's inevitable that's gonna happen if you're with somebody that has dignity and self-respect for themselves and is also a Christian. It's gonna come a moment where there's gonna be a lot of deep pain that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And the best thing that you can do is just to be honest about it. Because if my story says anything, I held on to this lie and that ended up being a death blow to my marriage. There's a lot of porn-free guys that have podcasts that are still married. God bless them. I'm not one of them. I went through a divorce, and that's part. And I'll get to it. But that's part of the impetus why I write is to hopefully be a cautionary tale to people to say, hey, it doesn't always work out. You know, it doesn't always, your marriage does, even if you're a Christian. And I didn't want to get divorced. And we tried to really fix it for a while because that was back in 2021, and my divorce
Yeah.
finalized in March 2023. So we actually, okay, so this is the next heavy part of the story. So, uh, really just tough conversations with her. The word divorce came up, and uh, I had a really the first mental breakdown I had in my life. Like really, I can say unequivocally that was like a mental breakdown
Yeah.
because I everything hit me because for like 2 years I was really doing well with things. I was really had things on track. And then this poor decision I made, or the series of events, the poor decision, the relapse, the lie, and then going to this place, coming back, it all just hit me so hard and the consequences of it. And now fully realizing that, yeah, this marriage might not work. Because divorce really wasn't a part of the conversation initially. And so I just remembered, just felt like I lost control, and I was just screaming, why does it matter? Nothing matters anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, I called the suicide hotline just because I didn't know what to do. I
Yeah.
literally felt lost.
Wow. Wow.
Uh and I told you this too when we were talking, but what I remember was praying to God, uh, just save me. Like
Yeah.
just save me, please. Like it was one of
Wow.
the times in my life where I felt completely powerless.
Yes.
And I just gave up. I just gave it all up to God, and I said, please save me.
Yeah.
Like, just
Wow.
take me in, like, I'm broken, right?
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Um, yeah, and it
Whew.
felt yeah, I just remembered it felt like I was in this roaring river, and, there was a boulder, and if you're in a roaring river, you hit a boulder, it's not gonna feel good, it's gonna knock the wind
Yeah.
out of you, but I still remember this today, is this I was just picturing this river I was in, I was drowning, and then God was that boulder that held me.
Wow.
And,
Oh.
yeah, and so then I talked through because I wasn't necessarily planning out anything. I wasn't at that stage really, but I really was just like, "I don't wanna be here anymore. I don't wanna live. I don't wanna deal with all this fallout. I'd rather just be dead." That's just what I was telling my and that's the enemy, right?
Wow.
That was like his moment to seize
Hey,
on this impulse.
yes. Okay, let's pause here because this is important. Okay. Prior to that, right? You're like, woohoo, I'm working out, I'm feeling good, I got my Bible study, I've had 2 years of sobriety, I'm getting ready to launch publicly and to help other people. And then all of a sudden fear comes in and procrastination. And I'm just thinking, okay, and fear is it's a normal emotion. Okay, I'm not saying there's a lot of Christians
Right,
that say you shouldn't fear, but fear is a normal emotion. But you're starting to feel, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Should I do this? Da 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 da. You're you have this felt possessed
right,
to relapse. Okay, and then the enemy starts whispering. He's a liar. That's his name. He's a liar. That's his. You know, Satan is a liar. And he's saying, you don't need to tell anyone. This is our little secret. Just move it on, whatever. And now, boom, it all comes crashing down. Your wife finds out. We're talking the D word, divorce, and now you're feeling like my world is crumbling. Okay. And it says in the Bible that the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. He literally wants you dead.
right,
That is, I mean, we've got to face the fact that there is an adversary and he wants you dead. And here you are now. Like, and what do you do at that point? You feel like I've lost everything. I've lost my wife. I'm probably going to lose my house, which you did. This is my calling. I was going to start this ministry, this Substack, my business, whatever, and it's all gone. And you're yelling out to God at that point. Okay,
Yeah.
you have nothing left, and his his name is Jesus, and he's the Savior, right? And it's like, whoop! I hit that boulder. And yes, it's painful, but he's saving you at that point. And I love the fact, I hate that you went through that, Mac. Okay.
Sure.
And I mean, anyone that's watching this right now can see there's still pain there. I mean, this is not a story. Yes, it's a story of victory. It's a story that you were saved. You didn't take your life. All of the things, but there's still pain in what you lost. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think a day goes by when I don't think about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And porn is a liar, addiction is a liar, the enemy is a liar. But here's the other half of that verse. He comes to give you life and
Hmm.
life in abundance. Okay. So the enemy was stealing, stealing, robbing, 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 but you called out to the one that can do something about it. Okay, which is what I love. Okay. So you call the suicide hotline. What happens next?
Yeah, I mean, they did a great job talking me through things. I mean, my ex was still really just wanted me to be okay. She's
Yeah.
a phenomenal person. We still have a good relationship and wish her all the best. And but I got in contact with the therapist I still have to this day. We actually met a few days ago and started to work with him for some sessions. He really helped me out. And then my ex at the time or my wife at the time, we went together and did some couples therapy. And yeah, it was just clear there was just so much pain there. And then she started to do, I think, her own individual thing. And then I stuck with him. And long story short, yeah, I think we just got to this point to where we did that for a year and then some change.
Yeah.
Uh, and it just seemed like I think on her end, and again, this is totally justified in her side. But I think I was at the time reading the Love Languages book. I think it's a Gottman book, if I'm not mistaken. The Love Languages, just trying to find.
Chapman, I think. Is it Gary Chapman that wrote that book?
Oh
Anyway.
yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's Gary Chapman, and because I was really just trying to figure out something, and like, can I do anything to resurrect this marriage, right? And and I'm not perfect. It's not like I'm just a perfect person, but I think I was trying to. I think what turned it around or what helped me was I just came to the realization is like I got to do this for me. I can't just do this for somebody else. Like I got to do this for me because I think before, in a way, I think I was doing it for her in some ways, not fully for me and my relationship with God. And I think my therapist really started to help me realize like, hey, you really got to dig deep inside yourself and figure this out because no matter what happens with your marriage, you gotta like you have value. Like you have value and you are a child of God and you're gonna glorify him, but we gotta figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's really when I started
Wow.
to do the EMDR therapy was with him. And yeah, that was just it was really helpful for me because I started to remember a lot of things that I just like, wow, that happened in my life? Yeah, it did. I just haven't thought about that in a while. And that's what EMDR does. Really interesting process. I mean, just the way that it all works. I definitely encourage people to look it up and look into it because it would really help me out. And it's helped a lot of people out that I've talked to. But yeah, I think just slowly over time, really emotional. I mean, a lot of tear soaked sessions. He also has his own dojo too, so that was a part of therapy was I was able to train some martial arts while I was doing therapy, which was cool. It incorporated some physical stuff into there, which is
Yeah.
really some Wing Chun. So I know some like five finger death punches and all that and all
Wow.
that.
Okay.
I know kung fu. No, no, I did it for a few months, but it was fun. Uh, but yeah, the EMDR really helped, and that helped me realize I think some really deep things within me, and
Yeah.
that circles back to with my dad. I think that was a really deep thing within me that I really didn't quite realize at the time that that was something that was really important because I think throughout our relationship too with my ex the times where she was distant from me or that I didn't get that attention or I didn't get that admiration or or what, those would be the times I think where I was the most triggered to look at porn to soothe myself.
Yes, of course.
So I didn't really quite realize that until started to do the EMDR, and by that time, basically the marriage, the love tank was broken, more or less. So I was working on myself, and then we decided to get divorced and file papers. It was December 2022, and that was just, I mean, gosh, that was just so sad. It was just really sad. I think there was a little bit of relief with us because it was like, hey, it's almost like we started to get along a lot better after that happened, just because we just
Yeah,
knew, like, hey, but it was really, really sad. Like,
yeah.
I hope to never. I want to get married again. I hope there's no way. I can't do that again. It was so
Divorce is
terrible.
no joke. It's no
Yeah,
joke. And
and
I'll tell
even
you
ours.
why, if I
Yeah,
could just jump in again
yeah,
spiritually, because this is the work that I do,
yeah.
is that it says that the two become one.
Hmm.
Okay? A man leaves his father and mother and he joins with his wife and the two become one. Listen, when you're trying to peel the two that have become one apart, there's
Yeah,
going to be damage. You know,
yeah.
if you glue two pieces of um, construction paper, a pink piece and a blue piece together, and you glue it
Right,
and dry, and you try to peel that apart, some of the pieces of the blue are going to be stuck on the pink, and some of the pieces of the pink are going to be stuck on the blue, and this is messy. Okay, and so you realize that like this is no joke. I'm losing a piece of myself because I've been glued together with her. So yeah,
yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's hard to say much else. It was just really sad, and
yeah,
you're not just divorcing uh who you're married to, but also I had a really good relationship with her parents. Love
oh
them to death. Really good people. They always treat me really well, and that's still something I just think about sometimes. It's just wow, like these
yeah,
people aren't in my life anymore, and just all the fallout was crazy. Just
yeah,
well, not crazy. I mean, it wasn't like we had this. We didn't even get a lawyer. We got a mediator, and
yeah,
it was
yeah,
very civil the way we both are like we're millennials. We don't want to screw each other over. We want each other to do well, and God,
yeah,
I think God was with us throughout that. And
yep,
but I will say, yeah, just separating and then going to my parents' house as someone that just bought a house, not and that was living in it for almost 2 years. It just felt very demeaning to just move back, and but
yeah,
I was very grateful to my parents. They were
yeah,
so kind. And they still are. Sorry,
yeah,
emotions. But
uh,
I mean, I'm just blessed to have a good family, because
yeah,
I can't even imagine going through divorce where you don't have a good support system, and it's
yeah,
just I really my heart goes out to people like that.
yeah.
But
Uh, I'm gonna pause
but
for a
yeah, I have a great
second.
family. Yeah, go ahead.
I God is just he's blessed you in so many ways, despite that what you've been through. And thank you for sharing so openly and vulnerably and sharing your heart with us. You know, you haven't to me that's also a sign of healing is that you are connected with your heart.
Yeah,
And porn is a poor substitute for emotional connection. And in fact it keeps you from an emotional connection. And so I'm seeing the byproduct of healing and the fact that you're connected to your heart and you're connected to pain and you know how to process that. But what I want to do now is just slowly start to wrap, mainly because I didn't plug in my phone and I'm going to lose battery probably in the next, I don't know, whatever, how many minutes. And I don't have my charger with me. But I want you to summarize, if you would, Mac, with letting anyone that's watching this know one, what would you say are the most important tools in any kind of, in your particular recovery of addiction, but in any recovery, and what role that you would encourage people to think about with faith? Okay, because it's so
Yeah,
easy out there to, I got to journal, I got to be accountable, I got to put, you know, think, uh, monitoring devices on my phone, and all those things are good. Okay, there's nothing wrong with those.
sure.
But what piece does faith come into that? So if you can address the tools, what was the package of tools that you use, and then what kind of encouragement do you want to give to people out there that are struggling?
Yeah, so I think I'll just weave into my story. So I'll try to wrap that part up. But basically, I went back home. I was sliding. I was going back into relapse just because I felt really depressed. And what changed, and this works in with the tools, was basically I was at my parents from like December through about May. But what happened was it was in February, Valentine's Day, 2023 was when my grandma went into the hospital,
Mm,
and we called her Saint Anne, just an amazing woman. And my grandpa died a few months before, so it's definitely like dying of a broken heart, and her health started to deteriorate. But what happened was, I was right when I reconnected with my recovery coach, who's still my coach now, Vern Tomke. He has a podcast called Finding Traction and Pastors on Porn. He's a pastor up in Canada. It was actually that night he urged me to get some accountability software because I was just sliding around. I wasn't doing that well. And so I did. I installed some accountability software, which was really helpful. And it was that night I got a call that my grandma was in the hospital. So I went to the hospital. And I just remember that really changed me deep down inside because I saw all my family in the hospital room. And literally I have such a big family, they're all popping out of the door. We couldn't fit everyone in the same room, right?
wow.
And we prayed over her, and I think that moment really hit me because I asked myself, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? You're alone right now. You went through a divorce. Your wife's not by your side right now. And that sucked, but it also kind of kicked me in the butt to say, "Hey, get your stuff together, man, because when you're on your hospital bed, when you're dying, you want to have a family by your side that loves you, that thinks that the world of you, that you made an impact." So I'd
Wow.
say a really big tool is really starting to look ahead and see what is your life going to look like on if you keep going down this path, the cycle, and what's the life going to look like if you do something different, if you start redefining who you are as a person, rebuilding
Right.
your identity.
Yeah.
And of course, a huge part of that, what we've talked about, is your faith in God, and really rebuilding that relationship with Jesus, and I think seeking him every day and listening to him and being humble, actually repenting for your sins is feeling remorse about what you did and then looking to right that wrong, to apologize to whoever that is sincerely. Not just that person, but to God, to yourself,
Yeah.
and to put actions in place to actually make it right. So when my grandma did that, another thing happened was my little brother and we made a pact with each other to be accountability partners.
Wow.
So we've been accountability partners since then. We check in every day with each other through voice memo. We follow, and I've written about this a few times, but we follow like a strategy called the FAST system, where it's an acronym, and that really helps. So I would say big tools, right, is thinking about your why, like why are you doing this? What kind of
Hmm.
legacy do you want to leave behind? Start incorporating accountability. That could be with someone that you know, a friend, a pastor. You don't really want to turn your spouse into accountability partner, but I think to start off with, that's a good way just to have some accountability. Accountability software. I write about that too. I just partnered with an accountability software, which is pretty cool. They've been around since 2012. So if
Wow.
you're interested in that, I have that in my coaching section. I have like a 20% discount, which is it's pretty well priced. It's kind of a mix between Covenant Eyes and Accountable to You, to where you have an accountability partner. So if you start looking at stuff, they get a text and it'll like blur out any images, but it'll basically kind of say, "Hey, this is what you were looking at," which is, yeah, you don't really want anyone seeing that, right? And it
Yeah.
just does that automatically. So it just takes
Right.
out and it adds friction. So I would say that. And then I started to reconnect when I was at my parents' house with my men's group again, because they're in the Denver area. So I've been with the same men's group since. I have been traveling in my RV. So maybe that's another thing too, is find out what your passions are, because for me, getting back into the RV and traveling, that really reconnected me with my passions of fishing and hunting and hiking, being outdoors in Colorado, seeing the country, talking to I like to talk, so I would talk to strangers on the road. And that really helped me out post-divorce and really with my recovery because I just felt so invigorated by the world to where porn just became this thing that I just looked at it and like, why do I even need this in my life? Like my life's full without it.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, and just to summarize, we talk about this in our recovery daily, and when I work with people, is uh, activities in recovery, your spiritual health, your physical health, your relationships, and then your passions. Those are like the four tenets there that if you can focus on those four every day and a part of that, that really helps shift what you're doing in your identity towards things that are serving you, that
Yeah.
are beneficial, that are fulfilling. So porn to start, there's like no room for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love what you're saying, and I would say I agree 100%. The only thing I would add to that is I'm plugging in my phone now. My husband's here. Yeah. I'm
Hey, there
like
we go.
texting. I'm like, can you plug me in?
Bought me a few minutes.
Yeah, yeah. Is emotional health.
Oh yeah.
Being able to identify what is happening inside of you emotionally. I'm lonely. I'm sad. I'm hurt. All of the things that are happening that undiagnosed, unprocessed emotions is what drives us to our addictions. Where fear, when you were experiencing a lot of fear in the beginning, that relapse right before you were married in your new home and you're thinking about launching your Substack and all the things, and then fear is bubbling up, doubt is bubbling up, and it's like, ooh, now all of a sudden I'm thinking about porn a lot. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and I was gonna add, so it's kind of it's interesting that you said the emotions. So I'll just lay out, and if we have a little bit more time to talk, I can lay it out real quick.
yeah,
So
do
when my brother and I we do our check-ins, they're called fast check-ins. So
yep.
the F actually stands for feeling. So that's actually
Oh
the
my,
first thing you talk about. So it's funny that you said that. I was jumping the gun a bit because I thought I had a rush, but the A is activities and recovery. So basically, you always start off first with your emotions. How am I feeling today? That's the first place, and that takes a little bit of time. I have a few articles about it because I've had some check-ins with my brother that have gotten really long because I'm feeling a certain way, right? But
yeah,
it's good to process that. But basically, F is for feeling, A is for activities and recovery. So then you got your spiritual health, your physical health, your relationships, and your passions. And
yeah,
then S stands for sobriety. So that's if you had any slips or if you just where's your sobriety? We use a traffic light. So green is good. Yellow's caution, you're edging closer to the red light. That's risky. And then red light is your relapse. That's your red line.
right,
That's, hey, I crossed it. I got to start over. Not start over with your recovery, but hey, whatever. If I'm tracking my sobriety, that's when I want to start it over. So
yeah,
that's the S. And then there's two T's. So the first T is your threats to your sobriety. So that's what is threatening my sobriety. So that's one of my favorite parts of the check-in is talking about the threats because it really helps you think about what are things that happen today or what are reoccurring threats. I
yeah,
mean, and as you get into recovery, you'll start to realize you can call out even the smallest things. I'll
yeah,
mention one today. I literally was because I was telling you I'm at my parents now preparing to go on the road in the mountains. I was going in the mail. I picked up just a flyer and it was for some sport I won't say. And there's just pictures of women on there. And again, it wasn't anything that was like pornographic, but that to me is like, hey, I'm gonna check in that because that could be a threat. Because
yeah,
in the past, when I was a kid, that would be fair game to me. So it could even be that you could be at the store. I think when you're in recovery too in sobriety, it's almost like you have this lens of clarity that you can see where
wow,
even the littlest things. I mean, I'll be at the store. If I check somebody out for more than a second or two, I'm already thinking, okay, hey, knock that off. Because if you keep doing that, then you're giving yourself permission to do other things. Or
Wow.
if you're on a site too long. So you start to become very aware of your actions and like what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's threats. And then the last one is tools to combat the threats. So basically, so if I was talking about that bringing in that flyer or whatever, the tool would be, hey, like I tossed it in the trash or whatnot. That would be like the tool. Or what am I going to do to avoid that? Or what am I going to do that's healthy? That kind of thing. Typically, my biggest threat is sleep. I
Mm.
think just with my life right now, I've just been doing a lot of things, so sleep's been tough for me, and that's been a trigger for me in the past because when you're not well rested, your mind just wanders more. So sleep for me is normally something that I mark as a threat. I'm not always good at doing it, but it's something that I'm working towards. And my mentor always laughs when I say sleep because I say it so often. He's like, "Oh, sleep again," because sleep is, I mean, as another
It's huge.
tool,
Hey,
as
listen, I
sleep.
start with that with a lot of my clients is they'll come and say I'm having this problem or my marriage is suffering or I'm out of control with my weight because I
Yeah.
see people physically, emotionally, and spiritually. That's my restoration. It's all three tenets because we're triune beings. We have a body, a soul, and a spirit. And so a lot of the times I say, you know what? Your sleep is the foundation and how your body is, we can't ignore that. If you're trying to
Right.
overcome addiction, if you're trying to overcome whatever, your relationship issues and your body is not well, it's going to impact that. So I'm so happy you're talking about that because I'm
Oh yeah.
100% on your bandwagon with that one. Okay.
Sleep. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what smartphones do to us. It's if we're on them too late, it's so hard to sleep, like your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that still today. I mean, being vulnerable about that. I'm just I feel like I'm on Substack all the time and I enjoy Substack a lot. But then part of it I just need to disconnect because it's like, hey, you're
Yeah.
always gonna get one more notification or someone's gonna say something like
Listen,
you can reply to them tomorrow.
I have a lot of clients that I see that have gone from one addiction to another. They're
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
"Oh, I'm not drinking alcohol anymore, but I've gained 50 pounds and I'm binging on sugar the whole time."
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, and so it's not about the symptoms; it's about the roots and kind of
yeah.
going underneath those symptoms. So I love what you're saying. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just wrap up the personal story would be that uh, so I bought my RV basically right after my divorce finalized. I was planning it out.
Yeah,
Once I knew everything was good, I bought the RV that I'm in now. I decided to go from Colorado down to the Florida Keys. I've got a buddy that lives not too far from there, and he's a great fisherman. He's got his boating license, so we can rent boats and go offshore. And he's starting
nice.
to charter now with some guys. So I'm like, dude, keep doing that. Like, own
Yeah,
your own charter, and then we'll just go on for free. That'd be awesome. But basically, the goal was to get down there, and
yeah.
one of my other really like best buddies flew in as well, and we just had a great time. But yeah, I spent about almost close to 4 months on the road, traveling. Saw a lot of family, which was really. I haven't written about this trip yet. I really want to because there's so many cool people I met along the way, strangers, really interesting conversations. But basically, I was able to reconnect with a lot of family I haven't seen forever. I actually saw one of my best friends that he was my first best friend. I knew him since I was a little baby. His dad was his best friends with my
Oh,
dad. They played college ball together. And I just never really hung out with him a lot. And he was in Tennessee. I saw him, hung out with him for few days. My older cousin Sam, he was in Florida. I didn't see him since my wedding. It was like 8 years. Uh,
wow.
and so then we saw each other and hung out. So it was just cool because I was able to see people along the way that I just never probably would have seen if I was still married. So it was a really neat trip. I was really talking, I feel like a lot about God, a lot about my relationship with God. And
Yeah,
then I got back to Colorado because it was around like the winter time. And my life sometimes it needs to always revolve around God. But the other tier of that is like hunting elk. There's this other tier.
God is hunting elk. All right,
There-
I like it.
It's like God and then elk. But like my dad and I, we go every year. It's and that's what I wrote about in my story was
Yeah.
my dad's been sober for 6 years from alcohol, and hunting elk actually was healing for our relationship because I actually talked to him about it on one of our trips, and I said, "Dad,
Talking about porn or the alcohol?
about alcohol,"
Okay.
because he my dad is so good with tools and fixing things and loves to hunt. And when we go out and hunt, we actually bring this old canvas tent. And we'll chop down trees and we'll set up this old tent. We got a stove. It's really awesome. It's this tent that he got from his stepfather, and the tent itself is older than he is, I think. But it's just
Wow.
something that we like to do. We like to get out and do that and rough it out in the wilderness. Well, there was one time we were driving to see my uncle who was in his RV actually probably about 2 miles down the hill. So we got on our ATVs. It was this crazy storm, and unbeknownst to me, my dad drank, like, a lot, and there was something wrong with my ATV, and I didn't quite know initially how to fix it, and he was just really drunk, and at that moment, I was like, "Man, we could get like, if I got hurt or something or he got hurt, this because when you're out elk hunting, there's no one that's gonna save you. You're just out in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
and the mountains can be very brutal up there.
Yeah.
And so I thought about this, and then the next night I talked to my dad about it, and I wasn't mad at him. I just said, "Hey, I love you and I respect you so much when you're in your element, and when you're drunk, you're not in your element. You're distant." And
Wow.
I basically just told him, "I want to keep hunting with you until you're like 90, but if you keep going like this, I don't think that's going to happen.
Wow.
And I want to hunt with you for as long as possible." And
Wow.
literally, you could see in his eyes, he got it. He understood what I was saying, and I didn't come at him in a place of anger or yell
Yeah.
at him. I just said, "Hey, I love you so much, and when you're sober, you're so sharp and you're on top of it, and I respect you so much. And then when you're not, I don't even really want to be around?"
Dude, that is incredible. I want to pause here because
Yeah,
this is a message for all of us. You were calling dad higher. You were saying, Dad, this is not who you are. You drunk is not how. I'm putting words in your mouth, but that's
sure.
not how. That's not what God has for you. I'm gonna. I want to see you up here, Dad, and this is where you're at your best. And listen, as human beings, we respond to that invitation to be called higher, and that's what God does for us. You are actually acting in faith like Father God towards your dad. You're calling him into his true identity. You're using your words to say, Dad, this isn't you. This isn't who you are. And you said, he got it. Instead of, because if you just came at him,
Yeah,
and it would have caused shame to come in. It would have
yeah,
guilt, and it would have caused potentially him to hide or run away. But because that you were actually partnering in my perspective, you were partnering with God's spirit when you spoke to him and called him into a different place. And it's incredible. So the punchline is what? Your dad stopped drinking, right?
yeah. He stopped drinking, and I was like 2 days later, I shot my first elk,
Oh,
and
come on, that is so awesome.
it gets even better. So the crazy part about it was, I think he started. So his dad passed away when he was going into high school of brain
Mm,
cancer. His dad was a bush pilot. He flew planes in Alaska. He was a geologist, just incredible man. Hunted, just it would have been great to meet him. Just super outdoorsy guy
mm,
and really smart. Passed away of brain cancer in his 30s. And that was when my dad was going into high school. And then when I was going into high school, I don't know in my dad's mind. I don't want to go there, but I think there was some sadness that was there. And when I shot the elk, I thought about my grandpa
wow.
and just being a part of that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it was really powerful. Like, I think the first thing I did when I shot the elk was I just cried. I
Yeah.
just cried, and
Yeah.
um because I never knew him, and I'm like, this is a connecting piece. Like we're
Yeah.
connected now.
Yeah.
And when I basically ran across, I took about a 500-yard shot. I shot it through the heart. I uh, ran across this field when we saw the elk. My dad said, "Go get him," and I just ran across this field with my gun. And when I got to the elk and I saw it, I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." My dad caught up to me, and I was trying to use this buck knife that I got from him, and I don't think I sharpened it that well. I was just so young. Not taking great care of my stuff. And my dad pulls out of his bag a set of brand new knives that he was waiting to give me.
Oh my. Oh
And
my
it was
God.
crazy. Yeah, I
Stop.
know. I know. It was like a movie. And I was like, whoa. So, anyways, it was just a
Wow.
cool moment. And
Yeah.
I think if that whatever that is to someone in their life with a parent or the loved one, all those moments exist with us. And but
Yeah.
you have to be, I think, present in the moment to really experience it and to remember. And I think for me, another benefit of being porn free is to have clarity of thought. I can remember things so clearly now. I think when I was addicted to porn and suppressing a lot of things, I suppressed a lot of memories.
Yeah.
And a part of being porn free is I'm not suppressing these things. I
Yeah.
might still suppress things. Like I gained weight. I'm still looking to lose weight. I'm not perfect. But with porn, it was such a deep suppression. And
Yeah.
now that I don't do that, I can actually remember things. And even if they're painful things, painful memories, there's a value to them. There's an
Yeah.
importance to think about them and say, like I said, I don't go a day without thinking about my divorce and the pain that I put my ex through, because to me it's fuel for me to be a better person,
Wow. Wow.
and
Wow.
just to treat people well, treat
Mhm.
strangers well, treat the ones I love well, treat everybody well. Um, but
Wow.
anyways, yeah. So my dad, really proud of him.
Yeah.
Uh, but yes, I got my RV. I was traveling. I was meeting people, and then as I started to travel, it was in May 2023, so 2 months after my divorce. I picked up Porn Free Millennial again with a renewed passion because I just I have some deep uh like a reckoning is coming to the enemy. That's how I feel. And
Yeah.
whatever way I'll do that, I'll do that in the nicest way possible to others, but I'm not gonna treat the enemy that well, at all. I'm not gonna leave any room for quarter, really. So that was
Oh,
really what
wow.
what fired me up, and
Yeah.
I think it's my main article that people see when they go to my page is my breakup letter with porn, and
Yeah.
I was so fired up when I wrote that, and I still feel the same way today.
Yeah.
But really, that's the impetus behind what I do now, what keeps me going really,
Yeah.
is that whole story I just talked about was
Yes.
it led up to this point to where I said, "Enough is enough," not just for me in my personal life, but for others in their life. Hopefully, this can help spur some kind of thought, be a spark for somebody that needs it. Because I thought in my life, if I could have just heard somebody talk to this in a relatable way, where I didn't feel like just a POS, that I'm unlovable, and someone just talking me through it while they're going through it a little bit ahead of me, I think that can be really helpful. Because I think sometimes when porn is talked about, at least from what I've noticed, when people talk about it, they do a great job, but they don't talk about themselves a lot.
Right.
And it's just like you, and I still wanna do that. I don't wanna just talk about me, but I also wanna say like, "Hey, like, I experienced this. This is what
Yeah.
I've worked through, and this
Yeah.
is what I still work through." And I think that relatability can help people. It's allows that door to be open in a way to where they feel like they can walk in and maybe listen to what I have to say, because
Yeah.
it's coming from a genuine place. And I think for me, I think about my little brother a lot, my accountability partner, and how he just celebrated his 5th year of marriage, and that was when my marriage ended. So, well,
Yeah.
if I can help him,
Yeah.
like I wanna see him thrive,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
getting emotional.
Yeah.
But I wanna see people thrive,
Yeah.
I think this day and age, there's just so much sadness
Yeah.
and people just feeling like they're alone
Yeah. Yeah.
and then there's no hope.
Yeah.
Ugh. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've interviewed a lot of men, like you're the first woman that I've talked to, and I plan on hopefully having you on my podcast. But I mean, just about every guy I've interviewed said that they had at one point in their life where they didn't want to move forward. And
Yeah.
that's really troubling for me because it's becoming more and more of a thing that people are talking about
Yeah.
with men just like not wanting to move forward or feeling hopeless.
Yes.
And I think a deep part of that is we're disconnected from God. And
Yeah.
I think when we're addicted to porn, it's a lot easier to become disconnected from God
Yeah.
because it's so deeply intertwined with our bodies
Mhm.
and our sexuality, like our life force
Yeah.
is tied into this like sick, demented thing, but
Yeah.
we don't know how to get out of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Whew.
It's a porn prison, like you said. You
Yeah,
know,
but you can break free from it.
no, no, and it's not something you can white knuckle yourself through for sure.
Right.
What I love about what you're saying, Mac, is it's such a bittersweet message
Right.
that you're talking about. It's the bitterness of what you've lost, and you have experienced a lot of loss in the addiction. Your marriage, you lost your house. There was a lot that you're grieving even still. I can see that. And yet at the same time, God is taking the ashes of your life, so to speak, the things that have just burned up and blew up, and he's giving you beauty. And this is a promise in scripture in Isaiah 61 where it says he gives us beauty for our ashes. And in that
Mhm.
particular scripture, he also talks about those people that have been captive, those people that have been in mourning, those people that have been devastated, the ones that are suffering in addiction, that in that healing that he gives us, he calls those people oaks of righteousness.
Mhm.
Okay, and they're the ones that go on. If you read further on in the scripture, it says they will go on to restore the ancient cities and the ones that have been long devastated. In other words, it's the people that he brings healing to that he uses to help those that are still in captivity. And that's what God is doing with you, that you're passionate about helping all of the people that are subscribing to you. And if you haven't subscribed to Mac, you need to. I'm subscribing to Mac, and I'm not struggling with a porn addiction, but I learn a lot from him because, substitute blank addiction,
Right.
substitute I'm disconnected, substitute I've got a father that I'm struggling with. And you're in God healing your addiction and is healing. I know you're a works in progress, right? But look at your dad got set free from his alcohol addiction, right? And your relationship with your father has been resumed in a way that that God really showed you in that hunting. When you were able to hunt that elk, and your father had those knives for you, and it's a
Right.
weird kind of guy thing, but I get it. It was just a
That's funny.
beautiful
Yeah.
circle of light thing.
Yeah.
But listen, this is how we're connected to each other, and your story matters, and your story is connected to your dad's story and your grandpa's story, and you're doing the work of healing so that when you have children, okay, and I'm prophesying that over you, that when you have your own family, that you have already done the work, and your
Yeah.
relationship with your children will be different. And so I just honor you so much. I honor you, and I honor the journey that you have been on, and I honor the fact that you are real and you're not glossing over your walk, because this is real life. People that believe in Jesus still struggle.
Oh
you
yeah.
know us, the gift of salvation is the first step. A lot of people think, oh well, I'm going to accept Jesus and my life is going to be forever, you know, I'm going to have no problems. But actually, there's a process of being sanctified and looking more like Jesus. And it is a process. And that's us looking at our pain, the things that we haven't remembered.
Right.
You did in your EMDR. You were having these memories of pain that just got pushed away and things that had happened to you that you hadn't dealt with. And so it's a process, and you're subjecting yourself to that process. And I think what I heard you say is the foundation is your faith. And it comes back to that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when you look at it, it is that, and I wanna share too, my little sister, we're walking alcohol sobriety together, and she just celebrated, 3 months,
Wow.
so I'm really proud of her too.
Wow, look at you. You cannot help to shine. You cannot help to help people. And that's a huge call that you have on your life. And your audience is going to quadruple. It's going to grow and grow and grow because you are faithful to what God is doing in you. You are taking the mess of your life, and we all have messes, okay? It's just not that you're messed up. We all do. We all come in with
Yeah.
brokenness, and you're allowing God to use you to bring healing and restoration to others. And I feel your passion. Okay, I hear your heart, and it's not just you're waving the porn-free flag. You're waving the kindness flag and showing up for people and talking to people and being there as someone that will listen and encourage. You're there for your brother. You're there for your sister. You're there for your dad. How amazing!
Yeah, and it's just been great, I think I feel like as a family unit, our gatherings have just been so much different, and all of us, we're all doing stuff as our family, my 2 sisters, my little brother, my mom, my dad, we're all doing that, but I think it comes from a place. If you saw what my family talks about, I mean, we're really just open with each other, but that's come through us, I think, being vulnerable,
Yeah,
and that can be hard, but I think once you break that seal on it,
yeah,
and you start to realize that it's helping other people, it it's hard just to be quiet about it, and
yeah,
yeah, I appreciate all those kind words, and I think for me, I really think that when you hit those real rock bottom moments and you have that literal come to Jesus moment that
yeah,
people will say, I think that that word gets thrown around a lot. That was for me when I called the suicide hotline a come to Jesus moment.
yeah,
I think it can really fundamentally change you if you let it, if you embrace it.
yeah,
And that's what I've learned from my life. I think back on my timeline and all the times I've been really close with God and connected with God, those have been times of abundance of growth, and not just that everything goes right, but when bad things happen, you can look at it from a different lens, you
yes,
know? It doesn't change the fact that grandma died, grandpa died, or this happened or that happened, but when you're connected with God, you see it and you're like, okay,
in a
you're
bigger
learning
perspective.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're seeing the beauty of life. You're not damning God for taking away grandma, but you're saying, "Thank you, God, for grandma being in my life
yeah,
and for what she did and what her legacy." Because I think my grandparents, I thank my parents. I thank my grandparents for what they did and what they sacrificed and all
yeah,
the things that they imparted upon my parents, which they imparted upon me.
yeah,
And I feel like in a way, ultimately, I want to glorify God. I also want to honor my parents and honor my grandparents. I want to honor my family,
yeah,
honor other people, honor the
yeah,
community of humans. Like with porn, we're not honoring each other.
yeah,
We are not honoring each other with porn. We're not.
yeah,
It's we're turning people into objects, and that's really sad.
yeah,
It's not right to do that to other people.
yeah. Wow.
And I think hopefully by normalizing the conversation and by treating people with kindness and but still holding firm and holding to, what is the truth?
Yeah,
I hope that that can help just normalize the conversation so that the next time someone wants to look at porn, they can at least just stop and think about maybe a meme I created or
Yeah.
something shared to where it's like that quick little space that is needed
Yeah.
to make a different decision,
To just
and
drop.
that's really helpful.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you have blessed me so much. In the short time that I've known you, I honestly have been blessed by you. I see how God is using you. I see how He's using your life and He's giving you a platform. I see that He has so much more for you, for you, Mac, and for your publication and your podcast and your coaching. Um, you you are the package, okay? And what I mean by that is it's not perfection. It's you're coming humbly and you're depending on God, okay? Where in
Yeah.
the past
Big time.
maybe has been, you're through circumstance have forgotten him, and he's the one that opens the doors. He's the one that protects you, because at the end of the day, the enemy there's an enemy out there that doesn't want you to succeed, because he doesn't want you to help people get free. He wants people to be robbed in the porn prison or in whatever prison they're in of anxiety or depression or food addiction, or
Right.
you fill in the blank. And so you're in the right place when you're connected to him, because he's the one that has you in the palm of his hand, and he's making a beautiful message out of what you have walked through. And so I just want to thank you so much. I just thank you for your humility, your vulnerability, your passion to help people. And I want to encourage anybody that's seeing this right now to follow Mac, okay, to get on his Substack. He's got tons of resources. I'm being blessed by everything that he writes. Your story about your dad was incredible. Okay, your writing ability is fantastic, and I just want to say thanks so much. And I know I'm going to be connected with you again. I know that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I just appreciate the time, and
Yeah.
you've blessed me as well. I think we initially, I think when we first started to talk to each other, like, oh wait, we'll talk for 30 minutes, and that didn't
I
happen
know.
in all the good ways. It was great. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we could talk the whole time, but you've
Yeah.
provided valuable advice to me, and I just appreciate all the encouraging words. And
Yeah.
yeah, I look forward to talking with you more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So God bless you, and I'll see you on the stack.
All right, see you on the stack.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
everybody. God bless.